Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the two-man game right here on Claibs Online. I'm Bob Ramsey. That is my partner, Matt Rocchio. And even though we're well into April, there's still a lot of even college basketball news happening, certainly on the local level and here in St. Louis.
Yeah, we just keep getting lucky. The news just keeps churning out. I'm going to attribute this a little bit to the transfer portal. Obviously, some of that I
Yeah.
think is obviously churning the news a little bit, and obviously some changes in the NBA rules with players being able to kind of be a little bit more freer in their potential movement if they want to get some feedback from the NBA scouts. So I think it's the player empowerment era. Obviously, there's some negatives, but I think we're also seeing kind of the benefits of these guys being able to kind of have a little bit more control in their careers. And obviously, sometimes it hurts your school, sometimes it helps your school. Sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you.
So let's start breaking down the Billiken news then. And Well, I agree with your overarching point about the transfer portal. Javon Pickett, who played 4 years at Mizzou, is a grad transfer.
Yeah.
So, that's a slightly different deal. You don't have to sit out for that, whether there's a portal or not. And so Pickett comes from Missouri to St. Louis for that fifth season. And I think that's a really good get for Travis Ford. I heard somebody say he's a bigger at 6'5", a bigger Fred Thatch. He really played well his senior year in SEC games. One double-digit scoring night after another, an occasional hiccup where he might have a 1 for 4 or something, but most of his SEC numbers were very good.
Yeah. My description would have been a bigger, more kind of offensive version of Fred Thatch. And
Yeah.
I think it's a great fit. Obviously, he's excited. He's known Javonte Perkins for his pretty much since they were like I think third or fourth grade is what he
Yeah.
said, and so him getting a chance to play with a good friend of his, obviously I'm sure had a lot to do with it. But obviously good for him, making this decision. And I watched a lot of Mizzou basketball, not so much this past year, but a lot of his first 3 seasons. I was a big Javon Pickett fan. I think I like his game, and I think his big guard game actually kind of works perfectly with what St. Louis has got going. I actually think, I mean, they're building potentially like a four out lineup that
Yeah.
is going to murder teams. I mean, if you talk about, and I'm talking about Javonte being your 4. And then obviously you'll have a Coro in the middle, having a bunch of big guards or big wings potentially to fill out the other 3 spots, and a guy like Yuri running the point. Most likely, I think he's coming back. It's just what they're building right now. Looking forward to next year, it's hard not to get excited. I know we already have been, where we've been fairly positive, but again, I think you get a veteran like that, and you get him into, I think, an offensive system that's going to be better for his talent, and puts him into a defensive system where I think he won't be isolated as much, and he'll be able to work within a team game a little bit better. And I think it's a great move on both sides.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then just a couple of hours ago, Larry Hughes Jr. announced that he's going to be attending St. Louis University as a walk-on. And for those who don't know, Larry played at CBC, won a state championship, and I think he could have gone a lot of places and played right away. But he's going to come to SLU as a walk-on. Legacy from his dad, the greatest Billiken of them all, even though we only got to see him 1 year. So maybe Larry Jr. can give us those other 3 years.
Yeah, and I've talked with senior, if you will, a couple times, and he talks about his son's game, and he talks about how his shot and a lot of it, and some of his offensive game, markers are kind of better than where they were even for Larry, and obviously it's relative to how much the games come forward, and so it'll be interesting to see how much he can develop his game. Obviously, I think it's a perfect get when you talk about a guy with obviously who he is, and being able to kind of bring Larry Hughes and the story of him back into the building, and it'll be kind of a fun thing there. Obviously, don't want to put too much pressure on Junior for that reason, but overall, it's a fun thing to get a legacy in the building. And then in a year, in multiple years, when we've talked about, you're going to have kind of like a backstop of players, and it kind of might be hard to get guys playing time. To get a guy who I think has a mindset where I want to grow into my game, and this is a good place for me to do that across a couple of years, it's perfect because it's going to be a pretty full lineup. He's probably not going to play a lot as a freshman, and this will be a perfect opportunity for him to grow his game. Get a little stronger, get in the weight room, work on his shot. We know that St. Louis has done great things for a lot of guys as shooters over the years and things like that. And so I think it'll be great for him. It'll grow the game. And again, I think it's, obviously, I think fun for the Hughes family for him to obviously follow in his dad's footsteps.
And the other interesting thing about the churning of the roster, if you will, is if you'll give me Fred Thatch, and I have 9 local players, and if you'll give me going to high school in Central Illinois, probably about the same distance as Sykeston, where Fred Thatch is from. If you give me those two, all but one guy, everybody but Jimerson is from the Midwest or the St. Louis region. If we call it the region, that's remarkable. That's almost crazy.
St. Louis's basketball team, I like that.
Yeah, very much so. And there could be word coming today or tomorrow, the next couple of days, about another signee for a young man from the area. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not.
I'm going to tweet out a bunch of sirens with just Bob Ramsey in the tweet. It's just going to be siren emoji, Bob Ramsey, SLU Billikens, siren emoji, and just see what people do.
And another guy from the area. So if that occurs, I think it's huge news, as big, maybe bigger than any, because of a different element you bring to the roster. So I think over the next few weeks, the final 3 slots of scholarships are going to fill out. I think everybody's going to feel pretty good about this team.
Yes, and there was a little bit of development today, John. Just in regards to the roster, kind of talking about that churn. John Rothstein tweeted out that Jordan Nesbitt has pulled his name out of the NBA draft, but Stu Durando, obviously always doing yeoman's work down there at Chaffetz, talked to Travis Ford today, and it seemed like when you combine the two reportings from Rothstein and Durando, it seems like, yeah, he's pulling his name out of the NBA draft, but he's still putting his name, into the portal to probably move away from St. Louis. And so, he's obviously a local guy. People wanted to see him, do well. He had a great year in a role that obviously he appreciated, but you couldn't expect. And then obviously when you get guys like Javon and you get guys like Javonte coming back, minutes aren't going to be as plentiful as they were this year. So I can understand the thought process there. And again, when you have the player movement, guys are going to be able to make that move if they think it's better for their career. And, he's got pro talent. And so I think for him, it's about putting his name out there, putting video out there, getting minutes. And so I think it's a completely reasonable decision when you think about it in that thought process.
Can he take his talent and turn it into productivity? That's the transition he needs. I agree. The skills are there. It's all there. Now it's got to be productivity on the floor. That's his next step.
Absolutely. So, like you said, still some St. Louis Billikens news to come, but it doesn't stop. Even just 3 weeks after the tournament's ended, it doesn't stop.
And it's pretty obvious. Anybody looks at the roster knows the Bills need some bigs.
Yeah. You said it was a big move. I that's what I thought. I tried to hold back, going, "Oh, big move. Oh, okay, big move."
And final thing, I'd love to see a true backup point guard, but how do you get somebody really good to come and sit? That's a tough call.
Yeah, I wonder. And that's why the Nesbitt news was kind of a little bit unfortunate, because you wondered could you find those backup point guard minutes in some of your wings that are a little bit more talented with the ball, have a tighter dribble, better vision, and those kind of things. And I'm not sure if anybody on the roster right now necessarily has that kind of skill particularly, and I'd like to see it. I think it would open up some of their games, but I'm just not sure at this point. And so I'm with you on that one. But like you said, when they were in on a guy like Xavier Pinson, it's like, how do you get a guy like that to be okay with, a good night getting 10 minutes maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, so I mean that's a hard sell, and that's kind of the way the game is now.
Yep. Yep. So let's move on to something that's more immediate, and that is the NBA playoffs will be underway today.
Let's go. Fine, NBA playoff. Listen, I've talked about it multiple times. The regular season isn't as much fun. Teams don't play defense. Blah blah blah. All that BS you hear. But now teams are locked in, and now we get one-game playoffs for a couple nights, which is going to be really fun. So if you're not aware, by the way, just to kind of break it down to everybody, because it's a new thing. In the bubble and everything, it's opened up the thought process, and so it's a little bit different than it has been in the past. So essentially, what we're going to have is two one-game playoffs tonight between the 7 and 8 seeds. And we're going to throw up the NBA playoff bracket and just kind of give people a little bit better description of this so they can visualize it. So the 7 and 8 seeds are playing in a one-game playoff tonight. If whoever wins that game between the Timberwolves and the Clippers in the West and the Nets and the Cavaliers in the East, whoever wins that game is the 7 seed playing the 2 seed. So one-game playoff
tonight.
Yeah, decided tonight. The Celtics and the Grizzlies will know who they're playing tonight. It'll be the Nets and the Cavaliers in the East, like I said, or Wolves and Clippers. They're in the 7 seed. Whoever loses that game is off until Wednesday. Put that aside. Or off until Thursday. Put that aside. On Wednesday night, the 9 and 10 seeds will play. Top of the bracket, Pelicans, Spurs in the West, Hawks, Hornets in the East. Whoever loses that game, you're out of the playoffs. Go play some golf, have some fun with your offseason. Whoever wins that game will play the loser of tonight's games. And that game, which will be played on Thursday, will be your 8 seed playing the Suns in the West and the Heat in the East. So we have three one-game playoffs for certain teams. And tonight's one off, bang, you're in the playoffs, and then tomorrow there's a continuation into Thursday, and then Friday we finally roll into the classic, everybody knows it, 1-8, 7-2, so on and so forth.
So you have to win one game to get the 7 seed, and you have to win 2 games to get the 8 seed.
Precisely.
Yep.
Even if you're the 7 seed, it's interesting, but that's the way it is. The big interesting one tonight, and injuries kind of are underpinning the discussion of this in a couple ways, which is Kawhi Leonard, which I talked about potentially coming back for the playoffs. It looks like right now if he could come back, it would have to be maybe late into the first round, early in the second, if he did choose to come back. So he will not be available tonight for the Clippers. I don't know if that'll, I don't think that changes that game very much. I still think the Clippers can beat the T-Wolves without Kawhi if Paul George has a big night. And secondarily, tonight's a big night. If Karl Anthony Towns can't, put this team on his back for one game, that's just an unfortunate, footnote for a guy who's made some strides this year, but I think we'll always, if he doesn't, start making some strides in the win column, and of course it's part of his team, but this is basketball and this is how people think about it, he's got to put a team on his back and win a game.
Yeah.
The more interesting one's going to be in the East. We've been talking about it all year, and it ended up being the Cavaliers against the Nets. Kevin Durant and Kyrie are going to be healthy. On the other end, Jarrett Allen. There was actually a really interesting piece today kind of that broke down the fallout with Jarrett Allen as a net before he got traded away. Problem is Jarrett Allen's not going to play tonight, and that's going to be a really big struggle for the Cavaliers. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun.
They've been struggling anyway. They still defend, but they just can't score enough. And we've been talking about them a couple of months, and you could kind of see it coming, and the bottom's sort of falling out for them.
Yeah, Evan Mobley missed 5 of their last 7 games. They went 1-4 in the 5 games he missed. They went, and then they finished out the season 1-1 with him. So getting Mobley back's big, but again, it helps their defense, in their more than it does their offense because they're a better defensive team. So when you're going up against potentially the best offense in the league, and I shouldn't say potentially, that's a weird way to phrase it. When Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are on the floor together, they are the best offense in the league. Whatever 3 nets you throw on the floor with them, they have the best offensive rating in the league. So it's going to be an interesting game because if the Cavaliers defense can slow him down at all, then it kind of flips it on his head, and you won't really know. Other than that, the Nets could completely blow him out. It'll be interesting to see, though, because, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have a 1-game playoff. So you're basically telling two of the best scorers in the world, you got to go out there and flamethrow for 48 minutes to get yourself to another round in the playoffs. That's a pretty enticing idea.
Enticing, enjoyable for the fans, but think about the pressure. And I don't know if Durant feels any pressure. He's been through it all, but it would be interesting to see how he and Irving handle it if they're having off nights for a while. It gets late. Cleveland's still hanging around. Can one or both of them take over in the final minutes of the game to put it away? The storylines, depending on how the game goes, can be a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're watching tonight and both the games are on TNT tonight, the two games tomorrow are on ESPN. If you're watching, this is also going to be fascinating. Karis LeVert, a guy who also ended up on the Cavaliers because of the James Harden trade from Brooklyn. Last season, not the James Harden trade, excuse me, the Kyrie Irving trade. Obviously, that's why they're in Cleveland. There's been so many damn trades to set up that super team. I'm getting confused. He was part of the Kyrie Irving trade. That's why he's in Cleveland. Watching a guy like him play against his former team after the injury problems he's gone through, and they have been extensive, whether it's been, I think it was his foot, and then he obviously had a real health scare and those kind of issues. To watch him bounce back and have a chance to knock off the team that kind of, moved on and said, we got a chance to court some superstars, get on out of here, that's kind of a fun little story too. I think it's going to be a dogfight of a game. It's going to be lower scoring than people are expecting. I think Durant and Irving are going to, they're going to face more than they really expect in this game from that Cleveland defense. But all in all, not having Jared Allen just means you're not the defense you have been for the majority of the season. The Nets are going to win this game, unfortunately. Well, I mean, not unfortunately for me. I'm kind of biased, but the Nets are going to win.
Of the 9-10s, who's got a chance to advance?
I honestly think it's the Spurs. The East is too good, even for a team like the Hawks to kind of make things interesting.
Yeah.
But the Spurs, on the other hand, DeJounte Murray has come back, and he's kind of righted that ship. Keldon Johnson continues to grow, and Greg Popovich has a scheme that works. He knows how to change his team around. I think that's been a fascinating part about Popovich's career. He's a curmudgeon on the sidelines, and yet he goes from running one of the slowest offenses ever to win a couple championships to all of a sudden being at the forefront of spacing to win, to kind of come back and win another one against the Heat. And then he reverts back to being this mid-range guru while everyone else is bombing threes when he has DeRozan. And so he morphs his game for his roster in a awesome way. I mean, I think that's a great example of coaching that maybe people don't accentuate enough with him. I mean, he's a guy who came out of the front office to coach for a reason. And so I think the Spurs, honestly, are the best one. They have the most full roster, I think, more so than the Pelicans without Zion. And when you have the guards playing like they have and some solid big men who are good in the pick and roll, can move their feet okay on the edge, and can guard the rim, that's going to be big. Problem with a team like the Spurs is that because of their big men not being elite, as soon as they get to a team like the Suns or the Grizzlies or the Nuggets, they'll get pick and rolled probably to death and just kind of get murdered that way, which is that's kind of the way it is in the NBA. People talk about small ball, Rammer, but no one's getting smaller in the NBA anymore. It's like there was a point where everyone got smaller, and then like all of a sudden it stopped. And everyone who was big just got faster and better at shooting, and now the NBA is getting bigger again. And it's like small ball is just not a misnomer. It's centers shoot 3-pointers, and there's 6'7" guards everywhere, and 6'9" forwards who can dunk the ball from half court and shoot threes from half court as well. So I mean, it's just the game has changed so much that there's just on the margins, if you don't have those super athletes, you get beat out in the playoffs.
It's funny to me that this is way off on a tangent when you're talking about how the league's developed with personnel. It always bothered me that for decades, coaches made the tall kid play with his back to the basket. Always. Instead of teaching them the guard skills. And you started to see some of that when the 3-point line came into the college game, especially because by the time a kid's out of college, if he's only played with his back to the basket, you're not going to make him a two guard, right? So, but now to finally see 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guards who can handle it and shoot it, it's an evolution that I think has been slow in coming in the game. And again, I think it's because in the formative years, when kids are learning the game, every little league coach makes the big kids play with their back to the basket. And now, and it probably started with parents saying, no, he's a guard. And I think it's really good for the game.
Yeah, and I think there's two really great examples. One of them local. We talk about a SLU recruit, Kellen Thames. He has a dad who's a big man. Kellen Thames was a big man, and his son, he saw him growing, but he said, no coach is going to stick my son, I don't care how tall he is, in the post and make him play back to the basket. My son's going to continue to learn guard skills no matter how tall he gets. And now we're talking about Kellen Thames as this, kind of unicornish, 6'9", combo forward, 4'3", can handle the ball, that kind of stuff, because he saw that coming and said, I don't care how big he is. The other kind of cool thing is Shaq was once asked, could you play in this game? The interviewer was smart enough to know that Shaq was going to laugh and be like, yeah, I would destroy everyone. But I think a better point was when Shaq said, I'm in this game right now. My name is Giannis Antetokounmpo, because he's like, I when I was young, I took it full court and Euro stepped and dunked on people. He goes, I would shoot a three every once in a while too. He goes, if I was in today's game, he goes, you see me right now, I am Giannis. And it's the game didn't get smaller, it got faster and more athletic, which is exactly what you should have expected, because that's been the trajectory of the NBA the entire time it's existed. And so, I mean, it's literally, I mean, no one thought that, Dr. J, no one thought somebody could sky like that at his size, or, no one thought Larry Bird could shoot and pass like that at his size. Hell, winning time. I think they did a good example of showing how early in Magic's career, everyone in the NBA was like, yeah, we get it. That was some kitschy.
He's a power forward.
That was some kitschy college basketball bullshit. He's not a point guard in this league. His dribble's too high. I mean, Jerry West. I mean, reportedly. I don't know if Jerry West actually said that, but I imagine they pulled that from an idea of what people were saying back then, and so. The game has always evolved in that way, and I just think you're seeing a new evolution. The centers didn't disappear; they just got, they just became, in Karl Anthony Towns' case, one of the best shooters in the entire league, despite being 7 feet tall. And it's going to be awesome.
And it's good for the game. I think it's very good for the game, and you still have room for a smaller guy. They can still play if they've got the handle.
Oh yeah. Look at Kyrie. Look at Stephen Curry. I mean, these guys, unbelievably tight handles. They can handle it in a phone booth, and all of them. Kyrie Irving, a few years ago when he first got to the Nets, actually, I don't think it was that long ago. He had that viral photo go out when he was working out, or he was warming up, where his feet were planted and he was leaning. And you could see, and I mean, the angle he was at was otherworldly, Rammer. You should look it up. Huh. And that shows an unbelievable core strength. Mm-hmm. Stephen Curry, people always talk about from the Warriors organization how Stephen Curry will out-squat almost every other player on the roster, because even though those guys are smaller in the league, they're two of the strongest players lower body and core-wise, and it allows them to continually finish against people. And so you're going to see that kind of athleticism on display all playoffs. I'm so excited for it. Rosters get smaller. One-on-one basketball becomes more common, but in a way that's almost better, because it's the best players going at each other's throats every single game. I'm so damn excited, and the playoff games are great. Play-in games are a great way to start it.
And to add to that, I'm really looking forward to seeing who teams really are. Too many times, almost every road game, teams would rest not one guy, all their guys. And I don't know how fair of a representation we got of many teams, especially when they played on the road. But now they're playing for all the marbles, and I think we'll get to really see who's who.
Yeah, I mean, tonight's just going to be fun to tune into TNT, because if you haven't got a chance, I understand a lot of people, they don't get put on TV a lot. So if you only have, if you don't have NBA League Pass, you're not watching a lot of Timberwolves games.
Yeah.
But Anthony Edwards is an absolute monster of a player. Karl Anthony Towns is the more famous one because Anthony Edwards is younger, but there's a reason he was the number one pick in the draft last year. You got a chance to watch him on TNT. Watch that West play-in game. I kind of poo-pooed it at the beginning because the Nets-Cavaliers one is going to be better. But again, you don't get a lot of chance to watch the Timberwolves. So if you have a chance tonight, Anthony Edwards is going to be great in this game for a long time. I swear to God, if Timberwolves don't get their stuff together, I will guarantee it right now. There will be a SportsCenter byline, Anthony Edwards sign and trade, max contract to the Miami Heat or something like that in 3 or 4 years, because he's going to be a guy who's top 10, top 15 in the league for a solid 7 or 8 year span. And you get a chance to watch him tonight. Kind of go for the jugular on a young Clippers team. It'll be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun when we get back together. We'll set the playoffs 1 through 8. And we'll get Rocc's picks.
Oh, I'm excited. Like I said, I love the playoffs, and this year they keep getting better. There was like a 4 or 5 year lull where people were legitimately kind of getting correct about how the parity had sucked a lot of the fun out. But throw that out of the freaking window. This is going to be the craziest one ever. The East, it never died down. We never oversold it, Rammer. I thought at some point maybe we were going to look foolish, but we never oversold the East, and now the playoffs are about to ramp up, and it's exactly as insane as we thought it was going to be. And heck, kind of thank the Lord that the Celtics didn't draw the Raptors, and 2 of their players would have been out for COVID, and that would have been a whole
different deal.
That would have been a whole dumb storyline we would have had to talk about. But now all we get to talk about is basketball, so I'm happy.
We'll do that later in the week, 1 through 8 after these first rounds of games. Thanks for joining us. That's Matt Rocchio. I'm Bob Ramsey. It's the 2-man game on Claves Online.
St. Louis Acura is the only Acura dealer in the nation to win the Precision Team Award for 30 years. How do we do it? By making you, our customers, our number one priority. As others increase their fees and take advantage of limited inventory, we keep our prices low because we remain committed to becoming better than ever and treating you as we want to be treated. We want you coming back and sending your friends and family to a veteran-owned, family-based business you can trust. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.